Believe it or not, it's 2026 and this is a brand new Commodore 64. It's not a clone or an emulator in a nice case. It's a modern build of one of the most popular computers ever made. It's being sold by a company that traces its lineage back to the original Commodore Corporation, founded by the legendary Jack Tramiel. And its designers say that it's meant to be a simpler, more distraction-free way to spend time with a computer. In a world obsessed with the latest tech, how does a brand new 40-year-old computer make any sense at all? Well, this thing does everything the original Commodore 64 did and a whole lot more. So stick around and let's take a look at what's under the hood. For its entire life cycle, the Commodore 64 was powered by the same 1 MHz processor and the same 64 kilobytes of memory. Those specs never changed, and people have kept using it long after it should have been obsolete. At its core, this new Commodore 64 Ultimate isn't an entirely new concept. It brings together several long-running efforts, including the MechBoard keyboard project, the hardware and firmware behind Gideon's Ultimate cartridges and recreated motherboards, and reproduction bread bin cases from Retrofusion. What is new is that all of this has been brought together under a rebooted Commodore brand, shipped as a single product and coordinated as one effort led by Christian Simpson, better known as Perifractic from the Retro Recipes YouTube channel. Now, until now, owning something like this meant sourcing parts from around the world, dealing with availability issues, and assembling it yourself. The Commodore 64 Ultimate is an attempt to turn that loose ecosystem into a commercially available Commodore 64, built from entirely modern components. And as of this video, there are 3 different models to choose from. An original beige version, a translucent Starlight edition complete with LED accent lights, and an exclusive Founders Edition with a gold keyboard. Now, this isn't a sponsored video or a paid review. I ordered this C64 Ultimate and paid for it myself. In fact, I received a faulty keyboard, so at the moment, I actually have 2 of the Starlight Editions here until one goes back under warranty. That said, I should be clear about my own biases. Perifractic and I have collaborated in the past. You may have seen a couple of my videos appear on his Retro Recipes channel last year. I was also a beta tester on an early revision of the C64 Ultimate motherboard, which Commodore let me keep. And my name appears in the acknowledgements of this very nicely spiral-bound user manual. That gives me some context. It also means that while I've made a real effort to approach this review neutrally, those experiences are part of the lens that I'm looking through here. Commodore is billing the Ultimate as a return of the company that went bankrupt decades ago and has a complicated history. The situation involving copyrights and trademarks around Commodore has since been messy, and I'm not going to try to untangle that here. Inside the Ultimate's shipping box is a retail package that closely mirrors the original 1980s Commodore 64 box, with just enough updates to signal that this is a modern product. The presentation is deliberate, and the attention to detail is obvious. The computer itself and accessories are packed extremely securely, arguably a little too securely in a few spots. Nothing was damaged, but you will be working against some strong adhesive to get everything out. The included power supply is designed for global use, supporting multiple input voltages and regional plug types. The printed user manual is visually very close to the 1982 original, and the bundled software arrives on a USB drive styled to look like a Commodore 64 data cassette. Around the back, the Ultimate starts to diverge sharply from an original machine. Alongside legacy connectors like the cartridge port, cassette port, and analog audio and video output, the user port has been replaced entirely. In its place are HDMI for digital audio and video, Ethernet, and 2 USB ports intended primarily for storage devices. The cartridge port remains fully compatible with original cartridges. The stereo output is line level only. Despite the fact that headphones technically fit, this is clearly designed for speakers, and the manual says so. It's not for direct listening using headphones. Physically, the machine makes a good first impression, but there were 2 issues that I noticed immediately. The metal Commodore badge on both my original unit and my warranty replacement was slightly warped. This appears to be a known issue. Carefully removing it, flattening it, and reapplying it resolved the problem for me, but obviously that's less than ideal. The second issue was keyboard flex. Both the Starlight and the Founders Edition keyboards are translucent, and as a side effect, they're very thin. My original unit had a defective keyboard PCB that exaggerated that flex. The issue was later confirmed by Commodore and, to their credit, was addressed, which I'll come back to later. Getting everything connected to power, sound, and video is pretty straightforward. Today we barely think about video formats. There's HD and 4K, of course, but for the most part, anyone can watch almost any video in any format on a phone or a laptop or TV anywhere in the world. The Commodore 64 came from a very different moment in time, though. If you were in North America, your television probably only supported NTSC video, and if you were in Europe, it was the PAL standard. Those systems ran at different frame rates, handled color differently, and were largely incompatible. At the time, television itself wasn't global, so the divide didn't matter much until computers came along and game systems that started to use TVs as their primary displays. With the Ultimate, you're no longer locked into a local video format. With the ability to run in NTSC or PAL modes, a huge body of software that used to belong to the other side of the world is now accessible. For us here in North America, this is huge, as some of the best games and most of the incredible demos out there only run on PAL computers. Most modern HDMI monitors don't care, and they'll display either NTSC or PAL, but if you're using an analog monitor with your Ultimate, there are options too. You can spoof the PAL system's 50 Hz timing while outputting an NTSC-compatible color signal, which means that PAL games can run on North American analog monitors and televisions. That alone would have felt impossible just a few years ago. Modern displays can actually be too good for vintage machines. These systems were never meant to be seen through razor-sharp, pixel-perfect panels to begin with. They were designed for cathode ray tubes, where the image is drawn line by line, softened by the phosphor glow and a little bit of blur. That softness was part of the look. The Ultimate, like a lot of modern retro systems and emulators, leans on simulated scanlines to bridge the gap. Some people find scanlines make games easier on the eyes for longer sessions and closer to how they remember these machines back in the day. Others want them turned off completely, especially when working with text, programming, or precise graphics, where seeing the raw pixel grid is part of the appeal. The Ultimate lets you turn scanlines on or off, but that's it. There's no options in the current firmware to tweak or customize them. In addition to HDMI, the Ultimate also supports the original analog AV outputs, including composite and S-video. With an appropriate video cable, you can turn on RGB video signals for an even higher quality analog video signal on vintage monitors that support it. Now let's take a closer look at the hardware itself. I picked up the Starlight edition. Some people call it the disco ball. I happen to really like the RGB lighting, and you can set it to dance to the music from the 8 emulated SID chips inside. The keyboards on the Ultimate are very much an upgrade from the squishy vintage ones, and while it may never be a pleasure to type on a C64 by modern standards, the response of the key switches on the mech board are certainly an improvement and actually invite typing fast and accurately. I read on some forums about the flexible keyboard feature or bug depending on who you ask. Basically, the Starlight edition and the Founders edition both have thin, clear keyboard PCBs, making the keyboard on those two models more flexible than the one in the beige version. I noticed it right away on mine, and I opened it up and discovered that my keyboard PCB was slightly warped, which exaggerated that effect. So I reached out to Commodore support and received a replacement unit. My replacement unit's keyboard PCB wasn't warped and was an improvement, but there's definitely still a bounce. I decided to try out a 3D printed support to see if I could get some more rigidity and improve the situation. I originally 3D printed and installed an additional support piece designed by RetroFrog, and it provided some additional rigidity. Since then, Jim Drew, the creator of the mech board itself, has released a 3D model of his own, which eliminates any risk of damage to the unit from rubbing and wear on PCB traces. I found Jim's model a little harder to print, so I haven't tried it yet, but if you're up to it, there's a link in the description. I'd say if you're on the fence about which version to get, this fix levels the playing field. The power switch on the side also acts as a menu button. Press it up or press Commodore Restore on the keyboard to bring up a full screen configuration system. From here, you can manage networking, system time, external and internal storage, video output, LED behavior, and detailed SID chip configuration for custom sound options. The C64 Ultimate is a cycle-accurate recreation of the original machine. It uses an FPGA to reproduce the original hardware logic at the signal level, rather than emulating it in software. That's why compatibility is so high. Roughly 10,000 commercial software titles were released for the original Commodore 64, and tens of thousands more homebrew programs and demos exist today. The C64 Ultimate runs almost all of them correctly. But cycle accuracy comes with trade-offs. The original Commodore 64 was famously bottlenecked by the 1541 floppy drive, and that behavior is preserved here. Even when loading disk images from USB, load times are identical to real drives. If you want that experience, it's here, including tape images and authentic loading sounds. Most people, however, will probably want something a little faster. You could use an original Fastloader cartridge, which works exactly as it did on the original hardware. But the C64 Ultimate offers a few better options, I think. It can load custom kernel ROMs without any hardware modification. JiffyDOS, JiffyDOS, DolphinDOS, and similar replacements dramatically improve disk performance while maintaining high compatibility. Installing one isn't exactly trivial, but it's much easier than it is on original hardware, which often requires soldering. On the Ultimate, you load the new ROM files through the built-in menu and assign them to the kernel ROM and the virtual 1541 floppy drive. Once configured, the machine feels significantly more modern without sacrificing compatibility. Check the comments for tutorials on doing this. It's a little tricky for the uninitiated, but it's totally doable. The experience of loading software without a fast loader or custom ROM set is excruciating by modern standards, so in my opinion, it's a must. So let's actually run something on this and see how it behaves. In late 2021, a group of developers put together a version of Sonic the Hedgehog that runs on the C64. It's basically a hand-translated port of the Sega Master System version. On an original Commodore 64, you could get something like this running, but it usually meant stacking on a bunch of add-ons. A RAM expansion unit, Fastloaders, cartridges, adapters. It was expensive and it was fiddly, and most people never actually had a setup like that. But on the Ultimate, we can just turn on extra RAM and load up Sonic. So here it is, Sonic, as it was never intended on a Commodore 64. Now, if you want to spend some time tuning your system, join some forums, subreddits, Facebook groups, or even the comment section of Ultimate videos here on YouTube. Once you have your bearings, there isn't anything that's too difficult to master. And while I can't show you everything in this video, hopefully you get the idea that while this machine is a little more complex, it's also a lot more powerful and hopefully reliable in the long term than the original hardware. Now, let's look at using some original vintage hardware with the Ultimate. If you have an original disk drive, that'll work, but so will a host of other peripherals. Original joysticks work. In fact, only joysticks that have the original 9-pin connectors work with the Ultimate. At this point, the USB connections on the back of the system only support storage devices, so put away modern USB controllers. They just won't work with the Ultimate. I have heard unconfirmed reports that USB controller and maybe even USB mouse support may be in the works, but I just don't know how realistic that is. What I have here is an original Koala Pad and Koala Painter software on cartridge. If you don't remember, the Koala Pad was a low-cost graphics tablet that worked with many 80s 8-bit computers, including the Commodore 64. In an era where the computer mouse was expensive and uncommon, the Koala Pad gave many users, especially kids, the power to be visually creative on computers for the very first time. The Ultimate loads the software from the original cartridge, no problem, and the pad itself works just fine. But let's say you have no original hardware or software. No problem. There's a bit of software bundled with the unit on the USB drive, disguised as a cassette tape. Maybe make a copy first, and then just plug it in and browse the files. Now, one thing that I think is pretty cool is the CommoServe service that's included in the firmware. What it basically is a C64 app store. The new Commodore company has gone through great pains to make agreements with software developers and demo coders to get permission to legally include them in this, what amounts to be a repository of C64 software available to download on demand over Wi-Fi or Ethernet. You just join your network and head over to the CommoServe search function. The search is admittedly a bit clunky, and while the library is impressive, it certainly isn't exhaustive. I imagine that there's just some software out there that has either been abandoned or publishing rights are just so entangled over the years that Commodore will never legally be able to include them in CommoServe. So if you can't find what you're looking for by searching here, you can always obtain software by way of your Mac or PC and copy it over to the Ultimate using a USB stick. The Commodore 64 Ultimate is powerful in a very specific, very Commodore way. It's a cycle-accurate FPGA recreation of the original hardware. It's not software emulation. Pulling that off is impressive. Doing it with custom keyboards, new cases, and modern power supplies, and actually shipping it is no small thing. For a boutique project like this, selling around 20,000 units is real traction, even if it's still nowhere near the scale that would make Commodore a household name again. As of today, Commodore's least expensive C64 Ultimate is north of $400 once you factor in taxes, tariffs, and shipping, so this machine definitely isn't for everyone. If your interest in retro gaming is mostly casual, a free emulator on a modern computer, something like Vice, may be honestly all you need. But if you're even considering real hardware, the Ultimate starts to make a lot more sense. In some ways, it's actually easier to live with than the original Commodore 64, which usually means brittle plastics, sketchy power supplies, failing chips, and a soldering iron never far away. What I like here is that the Ultimate keeps the original constraints intact, yet you still deal with disk speeds, memory limits, and the quirks of a 1 MHz machine. But you also get those conveniences layered on top, like fast kernel options, USB storage, Ethernet access, and reliable video output that works on today's displays as easily as it does on vintage ones. There are other options that look like a C64 and focus mostly on quick, menu-driven gaming, and for some people, that's probably enough. But the Ultimate feels aimed at something deeper. It's more about actually using a Commodore again, typing in basic software, loading demos, experimenting with hardware options, and understanding why this machine mattered in the first place. Back in 1982, the Commodore 64 launched what became a massive global community that outlived the company itself. Whether this new machine marks the real return of Commodore remains to be seen. But between the hardware, the software, and the community that's forming around it, this machine is a retro computer in its own right. I'm really interested to see where Commodore goes next. A lot of Amiga enthusiasts are already talking about whether this project could extend beyond the C64 toward the 16-bit machines that defined a whole different era. This kind of reconnecting of the Commodore and Amiga worlds, the ROMs, the software, is so complicated, but it's hard not to wonder what it might look like if even a part of that history came back together under one roof again. All of that remains to be seen, but for the first time in a long time, it actually feels like Commodore might be keeping up with us.
Are you keeping up with the Commodore? 'Cause the Commodore is keeping up with you.
Vintage Computer Festival SoCal is February 14th and 15th this year. Stop by my table. I'll be there with my Commodore 64 Ultimate, my early review Ultimate board, and a few of my other classic machines like this Apple IIc. It would help me tremendously if you'd like this video and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below and maybe even send this video along to a friend, because just like the Starlight, these stories shine brighter when they're shared. Thanks for joining me on this journey. I hope you'll find your way back here for the next Digital Voyage.